welcome back to Knits by Lizzy. My name is Lizzy and this is my channel where I talk about all things knitting. And today I have a knitting podcast for you where I'm going to catch you up on all my projects that I'm working on. Today I actually have two finished objects to tell you about. The first one is the sweater that I'm wearing, which is the Nova sweater, and then I also have a pair of vanilla socks that I finished. And then I also have a new whip to tell you about that is also a test knit. And so that is the Pearly Cardigan by Lea Ambar that I'm going to update you on and tell you all about. And then I also have quite a few acquisitions to tell you guys about today. I have yarn to tell you about, I have notions to tell you about, and I have a super big acquisition to tell you about that I was not expecting to receive for Christmas that I did, and I am so excited about it but also kind of intimidated. And so I really think I need some feedback and advice for this thing that I received. So that will be at the end of the podcast. I'll tell you about all those acquisitions and kind of plans that go along with that. So before I get into all of my projects and acquisitions, I first have something very exciting to tell you guys about, which is that me and Delaney of Black Dog Knits are hosting a Staffin knit along. So we are hosting a knit along for the Staffin sweater by the Crea, which is Rebecca Clow, and the Staffin sweater is this block textured sweater, and it is a raglan. And when you purchase the pattern, it actually comes, it's more like a pattern bundle, and it comes with a sweater pattern and a cardigan pattern and a vest pattern. And I think the cardigan pattern has instructions for both a v-neck or a round neck cardigan. So there are so many options, and we are hosting this knit along because both Delaney and I wanted to knit this sweater, and we're like, oh, well, let's knit it together. And if we're gonna be knitting this sweater together, we wanted to knit it together with as many knitters that wanted to knit it. So we are doing a pretty casual knit along where really it's a just group message on Instagram where everyone who wants to knit this pattern can support one another and share our excitement for the pattern, and yeah, just have fun knitting it all together. So if you are interested in joining this Staffin sweater knit along, please DM me on Instagram. So that's at knits.by.lizzy on Instagram, and then I will add you to the Instagram group chat. Again, everyone is welcome who wants to knit any sort of those, any one of those patterns within the Staffin package, and we are going to run it from January 15th. So by the time this video comes out, it has already started, and we're going to run it all the way through March. So there's lots of time to knit this sweater for the knit along, and we are planning on doing some like Zoom knit nights while we knit the sweater all together. And so I think it's just going to be a lot of fun, a lot of community. So if you want to knit that with us, you can, leave a comment, or you can just, again, DM me on Instagram and I will add you to the Instagram group chat. So that is a very exciting announcement. And this is the very first knit along that I've ever hosted, and so we're keeping it very casual. So I don't think there's going to be any prizes or anything like that. There is a hashtag that we could use, just Staffin KAL, Staffin Cal, so that you can easily track other people's progress in the group. But then also, of course, we're sending pictures and stuff in the group message to share our progress. So so yeah, there is a hashtag, but we're not going to be doing any prizes. It's mainly just having community together. So definitely let me know if you're interested in joining that. So I think now we can get into my projects now that little bit of admin is done. So please grab your own project and a hot drink and hang out with us as we talk about some knitting. So first, let's talk about my finished objects. So my first finished object is actually a pair of socks, and I put one of them on a sock blocker here, even though I have worn them a few times, but I thought it was just easier to show you guys when it's on a sock blocker. So this is just a pair of vanilla socks that I knit a 56 stitch size for, and these were for myself, and I used the leftovers of my holly sweater. So I knit the holly sweater for Christmas, which is a circular yoke sweater that has some color work around the yoke of hollies, and so I knit mine in like a beige for the main color, and then I had red and green for my hollies, and so I had to buy, of course, a full skein of yarn in order to get the colors for my holly and the holly berries. But what ended up happening is I had so much yarn left over, and the yarn I ended up using for that sweater was a sock yarn. So it was Cascade Yarn's Cherub socks, so that's a 50-50 acrylic and nylon blend. And I held that with a mohair for my sweater, but for the socks, of course, was not holding a mohair. But basically I had all this leftover sock yarn and thought it would be fun and festive to knit Christmas socks with the leftovers of my Christmas sweater. And so that's what I did here. So this is, yeah, again, just a vanilla sock, and I did a contrasting cuff. I believe I knit 15 rows for the cuff, and then I just knit the leg until it seemed long enough. And then I did a contrasting heel for the red, and I did a slip stitch heel flap and gusset, and then did some gusset decreases, and then knit the base of the foot, and then did a contrasting toe as well. And I think I'm still definitely figuring out the best fit for socks for me. This is my first pair of vanilla socks that I've ever knit myself, and I've only knit one other pair of vanilla socks at all prior to this that I knit for my boyfriend. And so I think 56 stitches is the correct circumference for me, number of stitches for the circumference. Oh, and I also knit this on 2.0 millimeter needles. Now I knit circulars, so pretty tight gauge. I think a lot of people knit socks at like 2.25 millimeter needles or even 2.5 millimeter needles, but I have a tiny bit of a looser gauge than average, and then also I kind of wanted my socks to have a really tight fabric, tight gauge, so that they would last the longest. So I've been using 2.0 millimeter needles to knit socks, and I did the 9-inch circular method because I cannot figure out on Magic Loop how to not get like a ladder at the part where you switch from one needle to another. And so I've knit some socks with Magic Loop before, but after I tried the 9-inch circulars for the first time, I was like, okay, this is definitely what I'm doing from now on. So that's what I like best, and that's how the socks come out best for me. But for this sock, I think that I didn't knit the foot part of the sock long enough. I have found that they are kind of wanting to like fall down a bit, and I don't think that I should go any smaller for like the circumference for the leg. Like I think the leg is actually fine. I think what's happening is that because the whole foot itself is not long enough, that it's just like kind of wanting to like fall down a bit and like slide off my heel, and so then that's bringing everything else down. They're not so small, and that's not happening enough to make them like not wearable. Like I've worn them several times since I finished them, but I think that next time I knit a pair of vanilla socks that I'm gonna knit the foot a lot longer. So if you are someone who knits a lot of socks, at what point of your foot do you start your toe decreases? I guess it probably depends on like people have different maybe like lengths of toes. I've heard before that maybe when you get to the end of your pinky is a good time to start your toe decreases, and I think I was starting my toe decreases like halfway down the pinky on my foot, and I guess that wasn't enough. So next time I'm going to actually I don't even remember the number of rows I did for the foot. I was just kind of measuring, but next time I'm definitely going to, next time I make a sock, I'm definitely gonna like lay it on top of this sock and see how that lines up and make it longer, and then also just try it on my foot. But yeah, I am trying to knit more socks this year. I only knit a handful last year, maybe like I think I knit 3 pairs of fingering weight socks, and then I knit 2 pairs of DK weight socks for Christmas. But I really do love socks in general. Like I am someone who likes to wear really fun socks. Like I have a ton of crew length socks. Like I'm wearing socks I'm wearing right now that you can't see have mushrooms on them. Like I really love wearing wacky socks. So I think that I would really love wearing socks that I had hand knit myself. I just often get so distracted by sweaters and wanting to knit like the next garment that I don't knit socks. But when I knit these, I cast them on December 23rd and finished them on December 28th. And so I was knitting them like during that Christmas, like right over Christmas time, which is very festive and fun, which is like one of the main reasons I cast them on. But I found that it was really easy for me to just like kind of pick away at the sock while doing other things. So like even when I was like visiting family on Christmas Day, I brought the socks with me so that when we were all like sitting around and chatting, I could knit away at my socks while I was talking to people, which was really fun. And so I think that it would be really easy for me to have a pair of socks kind of like on the go at all times. And what I was thinking is that I might just keep a pair of socks at work and just like maybe even just leave them there like overnight during the week, and then work on them during my lunch break. And so then I would just knit on them for like 30 minutes a day. But I think if I knit for 30 minutes a day, I could finish like a pair of socks, especially if I'm making just vanilla socks. But I think I want to do cables and stuff. But I think that if I knit just at lunchtime on socks during the week, I think I could finish a pair of socks for myself once a month. So I am going to declare a loose goal for myself to finish 12 socks in 2025. That might be a little bit ambitious, but I think if I am able to find this like time that I normally wouldn't be knitting, so like usually I don't knit during my lunch break because I don't bring knitting to work, but if I'm able to like carve out times in the day that I usually don't knit and then just kind of like slip some sock knitting in there, I think I'd be able to make a pair of socks once a month, which I think would be really, really fun. So I haven't cast on any socks for January yet, but I'm going to very soon. I have a couple skeins of like some fun sock yarn in my stash. I might just make a few vanilla socks at first so that I can really get the fit down before I venture out into some more complicated knits. I have made some lace socks before. It's the only other pair of socks I've made myself, and those fit pretty good. But I think I need to just like, I don't know, I think I need to learn more about sock knitting, and I'm gonna do it by knitting a lot of socks this year. I think if I do some lunchtime knitting on socks, I can get a lot this year. So this finished object, I usually do like a lot of stats for finished objects, but for this was just a vanilla sock pattern. I think I looked at the Crazy Sock Lady's tutorial just to like double check that I was doing the heel flap and gusset and stuff correctly, because I haven't knit a ton of socks, but I have knit some before. So I wasn't really following up the pattern, but I guess if I had to point to one, that's what I would say is the vanilla socks by the Crazy Sock Lady. And then this is leftover yarn from my holly sweater, and so I don't really have a yarn price for this project. So this is like kind of like an extra, like the price for this project I think is kind of worked into the price of my holly sweater project. So I'm just counting these as like, this is like a, you know, girl math, this is like a $0 project. Even though of course it's not, I had to buy the yarn, but it was leftover yarn from that project. So there's not a ton of stats to stay on this. Again, I cast it on December 23rd and finished it on December 28th. And so 5 days to knit these socks, and they were the only thing that I was working on during that time period. So that's how I was able to finish a whole pair in 5 days while I was doing, you know, like family things. So first finished object, pair of vanilla Christmas socks that I'm definitely going to be wearing even when it's not Christmas because they are fun. Okay, so my next finished object is the Nova sweater by the Knit Purl Girl, which is what I'm wearing right here. And this is a circular yoke sweater that has some colorwork bands in the yoke. And I knit this out of Amigo XL, and it was just a really fun, quick knit to work on. I mainly worked on it during like the Christmas holiday break because I had some time that I took off of work. So this knit up super quickly. And it is pretty darn warm. So this is a worsted weight yarn that I knitted up on, and it's been slightly warmer here in New Hampshire the past couple days, as in it's been like 25 degrees Fahrenheit instead of like 5 degrees Fahrenheit. And I've actually gone out just wearing this sweater in like just below freezing weather, so like 25 to 30 degrees Fahrenheit. I like did errands this past weekend, and all I wore out to do those errands was this sweater. So in like nearly freezing weather, the sweater has been able to keep me warm enough that I didn't need to wear a coat. And then also I had just cast it off, and so I wanted to just wear it around, so I kind of made it work. But I did find that it was very, very warm, so this is going to be perfect for winter. And I am so happy with the color choices that I picked. They were kind of it was kind of an impulse, like point of the moment purchase, because I purchased this yarn when Hobbii was having a Black Friday sale back in November, and so at the end of November. So I've had this yarn for a while and was thinking of it for the Nova sweater because I knew I wanted to start 2025 off with a colorwork sweater, and so this has been in the works for a while. And so I got this yarn like over 50% off, I think, and I knew I wanted a darker background and a lighter on top, and so I decided to go with blue, and I'm really happy that I did. And actually I'm thinking, now that I've now that I've made this and I've tried it on, I can kind of like see myself wearing it. Now that I've made this sweater in dark blue, which I don't have a ton of dark blue stuff, I am thinking that I should make more things in dark blue because I think that the dark blue color like works pretty well with my like coloring and complexion, and I think it might honestly might work better than black for me. But yeah, I've never done one of those like color season analyses things, and I'm not going to, but I think that it might be a good idea for me to make more stuff in dark blue. So that was fun to find out. So I also, when I finished this, I steamed blocked this garment now that I finally have a garment steamer. So this was the second garment that I've ever steam blocked. I also steamed block a garment that I gave away for Christmas. And so the steam blocking worked pretty well. I was able to, one, just like kind of like loosen up the whole garment in general. And then I was able to stretch out my ribbing so that it wasn't cinching in. And then I also was able to kind of like smooth out the color work from puckering. I did go up a needle size when I knit the color work. So the majority of the sweater I knit on 4.5 millimeter needles, but then for the color work, I went up an entire millimeter. So I knit the color work on 5.5 millimeter needles. I believe in the pattern she suggests that you go up to like 5, but I just knew myself and I went up to 5.5 in order to prevent any sort of like gauge issues. And throughout the color work motif, there's a few rows where you're just knitting like stockinette in your main color, and even though it was only 1 or 2 rows, I actually went back down to the 4.5 millimeter just for those few rows because I really wanted it to lay flat. So I think that was a good decision. And then the steam blocking helped too. However, I think that there's still like, I don't know if maybe you can't see it on here, but I could tell when it was like laying flat on the blocking mats. I think that there might still be a little bit of puckering going on. So I might give it a second steam block and try to like really smooth that out. I still am quite new to steam blocking, and I'm not sure like how long I'm really supposed to go over each section and before it's like done and the steam blocking has done its job. Like I went over the color work part more than I went over the rest of the sweater because I felt like it needed to be blocked out more, and like I went over the ribbing more than the rest of the sweater. But I did go over the rest of the sweater, but I've just been kind of, you know, like very, very not touching the garment, but very close to the garment, holding the steamer, and then slowly going over it and then going over it multiple times. But I don't know if, for example, it's better to go over the entire garment like one time, but very, very slowly where you're holding it at like each point for a few seconds, or to go still very slowly, but a tiny bit faster and multiple times. Like, I don't know if that equals the same amount of changes to the fibers. If you know anything about steam blocking, please let me know. So yeah, I'm still learning about steam blocking and just playing around with it and trying to figure out the best way to do it that works for me. But I still think that this steam block was successful, and I could tell the difference between before I steam blocked it and after I steam blocked it. I didn't take any footage, and I don't think it would be that drastic. It was mainly just like the ribbing pulling in versus not pulling in. But yeah, I'm happy with how the steam block turned out. The color work was really addictive, not too hard, but just intriguing enough to like really keep you going. So that was a really fun thing to do over the holiday break, and I think this is like a really good way to start off of 2025. I made one modification of taking out the very last band of color work. So there's like a few different color work motifs in the yoke in the pattern, but I just didn't do the very last one because my row gauge was larger than the Knit Purl Girls row gauge, and so I wasn't at the total point to split sleeves at the where I stopped the color work, but I measured that if I had done the final color work band that I would have been too far into the yoke, and I really wanted to make sure that my yoke wasn't like too low, because I think that can happen in circular yoke sweaters like more than other sweaters, that if your yoke is really, really low, it doesn't fit as well. Like for example, in a raglan sweater, I think if your yoke is really low, like it still fits fine, and you can get really oversized that way. But I think in a circular yoke sweater, it's not the same. It won't fit quite as well if your yoke is too deep. So I didn't want the yoke to be too deep, so I took out that color work band, and then I ended up just having to knit a little bit of stockinette after I had done the short row shaping, because there's short row shaping after the collar work in the sweater to help with the fit. So instead of having short row shaping like right after the collar in a lot of patterns, because there's the collar work, and to make the collar work be, you know, all seamless. The short rows instead are added after the color work. So after I did my short rows, I did a little bit of stockinette to make sure that my yoke was the centimeter depth that is suggested in the pattern, and then I split for sleeves. And then I made one other small modification, which is I added some contrast color to the tubular bind off for the sleeves and then also the hem. And this is something that I did on my porcelain sweater as well, and I really, really liked it, and I think I'm going to do it on most of my colorwork sweaters. I didn't do it on the Holly sweater, which is my other colorwork sweater I've knit, but it just didn't seem to go with that sweater. But I think for most of my colorwork sweaters, I'm planning on doing this. I really love how it looks, and I also love how tubular bind-offs look with really chunky yarn. So I didn't just do an Italian bind-off, I did a tubular one where I did those double knit rows before I did the sewn bind-off, which I believe is the difference between Italian and tubular. I'm not sure. But yes, I did do a few rows of double knitting, and I did 2 rows of double knitting, meaning that I did 2 rows of each, knit 1, slip the purl, knit 1, slip the purl, and then also 2 rows of slip the knit and then purl, meaning that I had in total I had like 2 rows of knitting. But because with double knitting, you're knitting like half the stitches on one row and then the second half on the other row, it's like you have to go around 4 rows, but really it's only 2 rows of double knitting. And so I did those 2 rows of double knitting in the contrast color, and then I sewn. And then of course I did the sewn bind off part in the contrast color, and so that's how I created this bind off like this. And I really like how it kind of like ties it all together and brings that little pop of the colorwork back because it's only in the yoke. So I think this is a great way to start off of 2025, and so excited to wear this all the time this winter. Alrighty, so now I'm gonna get out my chalkboard and give you guys the stats for this sweater really quickly. So this is the Nova sweater by the Knit Pro Girl, and I knit size A, and I knit this on 4.5mm needles, which is what is suggested in the pattern. And I cast this on December 29th and finished it on January 11th. So this took me only 13 days to knit, just under 2 weeks. It went by super fast, but I did have a lot of time to be knitting during that time because I was you know, on a holiday break from work. The yarn I knit this in is Amigo XL, and I knit it in dark blue melange as my main color and then sky blue as the contrast color. And I went up to 5.5mm needles when I was doing the stranded colorwork part for this sweater. And my cost for this project was $0 for the pattern because this is a free pattern by the Knit Pro Girl, which is just so amazing. As I mentioned in my colorwork pattern video that came out a week or so ago, I highlighted this pattern in that video, and I described how this pattern really does contain everything that you normally get with a paid pattern, but it's just free. So it's really amazing. You have short rows, there's a huge size range, 10 different sizes, you know, colorwork charts and everything. So yeah, it's a great pattern that is free. So I paid $0 for the pattern, and then for the yarn, I was able to get it on sale for Black Friday from Hobbii, and so I only paid $2 a ball for this worsted weight yarn, and they came in 50-gram skeins. And so I used 8 skeins of the main color and then 1 skein for the contrast color. And for that 8th skein of the main color, I only used maybe like 1/10 of it or something, or less than 25% I think of the 8th skein. So for 9 skeins at $2 a skein, that is $18 in yarn, and because the pattern was free, $18 is my total cost for this project. So that is $18 for a project that took me 13 days to knit. So that is the Nova sweater by the Knit Pro Girl. Okay, so now we will move on to my works in progress, which I have one of. The work in progress that I have going on right now is a test knit. So I am test knitting the Pearly Cardigan by Lea Ambar, and I am test knitting size 3. This is a saddle shoulder construction cardigan, and the main feature of this cardigan is that it has these I-cord edging around each of the kind of like sections of the cardigans. So around each of the left and front, you have some I-cord shaping, you've got some I-cord shaping around the cuffs, and all around, so it's kind of like bordering the whole cardigan, so you can have a nice little pop of different colors in this cardigan. And Lea reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to join this test knit, and it was so beautiful that of course I said yes. And so I am test knitting this for her, and I'm very excited to be part of the test knit group. So I am a test knitting size 3, and this is on 4mm needles. So this is a DK weight pattern, and so I am knitting this out of, surprise, surprise, Cascade Yarns Cherub sock. In the color white, so not ecru but white, and then I am holding it with the light blue color of Lammy Yarns Soft Sensations, which is this mohair that is made from synthetic fibers, which I absolutely love, and the contrast color that I'm doing for this is cream, and so I actually have leftovers here from my holly sweater that I'm using. And so this is ecru, which is also Cascade Yarns Cherub sock. And so when I look at the ecru by itself, I think, oh, that looks like white to me. But if you compare the white color and the ecru color, you can really tell that this ecru is really more like a cream. It's got like a warm undertone, and the white has a blue undertone to it, which is why I wanted to hold this white yarn with that light blue mohair. And I am doing these colors because I am actually knitting this cardigan for my older sister, not for myself. So I asked her what color would she want a cardigan and what highlight color would she want for a cardigan, and she said light blue and cream. And so I am using the ecru as my contrasting colors for all of the I-cords, and I'm using the light blue mohair with the white to get kind of a marled light blue color for the main color. So I started this only a few days ago, but I have the left front done here, and I think I can give you a pretty good idea of what this is gonna look like. So I'll hold this up so you can see the fabric. So the light blue is like really coming through, but of course it is marled because I'm holding it with white, not another light blue. But I really think it's really pretty. It's coming off as like a little bit brighter in the camera, but it's a very beautiful, like soft light blue. And then here, I'll zoom in on the I-cord part. There we go. So you can see that at first I was afraid that the I-cord was gonna look too white, like I was just using, you know, my white Cherub sock, but I really think it does look more like cream rather than white. I know that's like a very subtle difference, but I am happy with how this is turning out. So this is, again, I said this is a saddle shoulder construction, and so you start with making the panel that is going to be your saddle shoulder, and then you kind of build off of that panel to add I-cords and then make the rest of the garment. But I think this design is pretty unique. I haven't really seen any sort of like I-cord edging of this type before. You know, it could be that I just haven't been exposed to it, but yeah, I think it's really pretty, and I'm very excited to make that for my sister. So this test knit goes through all the way through the end of March, Lea said, and so I'm not going to, my plan is to hopefully not stress out too much about it, about the deadlines, just kind of like work on it as I can, because I do have some other sort of deadline knits as well. So I think the fact that this test knit has a really long testing period is really, really great for the test knitter experience, so that I don't have to be too stressed about it. And then there is a nice group chat on Instagram for this test knit so that we can discuss any sort of problems that come up. And so far it's been really, really fun. Definitely an engaging yoke to put all these pieces together, and I learned a new technique for casting on that I hadn't done before, so that's always really fun, and all the more reasons to do test knits, to try out new things. And so yeah, that is my Pearly Cardigan by Lea Ambar, and I'm really excited to give this to my sister. So one of the reasons why I decided to knit this cardigan for my sister instead of myself was that I have in my plans for this winter is to knit the April cardigan by Petite Knit and the book club cardigan by Sorry Nordland. If you've been on this channel for a while, you've heard me talk about this for a long time. I have been wanting to knit those two cardigans for like months, like since the beginning of the fall, and so I really do want to do that. And so since I already have two other cardigan plans, I figured I don't think I really need 3 cardigans for myself all at once, and so I'm very happy to be making that for my older sister, and she is just a tad bigger than me. So I am 5'1" and she is 5'3", and so we're still like fairly close in size, and so I think I can still use myself as a fairly good model for how things are going to fit her. I'll just make things like a little bit longer to fit her body, or like I chose a size 1 I chose a size 1 bigger than I would have knit for myself, and I think it's gonna work out great. And I can actually transition from here into acquisitions because I have buttons that I got over this past break for this cardigan. So my first acquisition is for this cardigan, and I have some white buttons because the contrast color is white. I thought that would look really good on the button band. So I got these kind of, what would you call them, like kind of mother of pearl sort of buttons, and they have a silver outline. I got 6 of them, and here I'll put it against the fabric so you can see what it's gonna look like. I believe this cardigan has a ribbed button band. There, so that is what it's gonna look like on, and I think it's just gonna be so pretty and like dainty little cardigan. I think that my sister is really gonna like it, and I think that I'm gonna see her, I don't know, using these kinds of buttons, and I think she's really gonna like it. So I'm really excited to make this test knit for my older sister. So that's my first acquisition, and these buttons I got in a button store in Victoria, British Columbia. So I made a small trip to Canada over the break and with my younger sister, and we did a little bit of shopping. We were there for the new year, and it was really, really fun. And of course I was like, okay, let's find a yarn store around Victoria. And the main street in Victoria is called Government Street, where there's like a bunch of different shops, and we were shopping along Government Street, and then I just was like, okay, let's see if there's any yarn shops close by. And I think I literally just typed in like yarn store into Google Maps, and we went to the first one that was like a block away, and it had all these really, really gorgeous buttons. So that's where I got those buttons, and I also got another button at that store. So this is the other button that I got at this store, and it's this pretty big brass button that's got these roses on it. And this is also a button for another gift knit for my other sister. So I got this at the same button store as those white buttons, and I was with my younger sister on this New Year's trip to Canada, and she had asked, so there's a bit of a story here. So last February, her birthday's in February, she asked for a red scarf for her birthday. And so I knit a Sophie shawl out of a red color, and I knit the whole Sophie shawl, and then I mailed it to her. At the time she was living in New York City, and so I mailed it to her apartment in New York City, and it just like never arrived. I don't know if I had some sort of mess up where I like mixed up the apartment number and her street number or something like that. Like it could have been on my end, but we don't really know. Like she tried to talk to the post office, and they couldn't really fix it. So basically somewhere in existence there is a Sophie shawl that I made for my sister that never made it to her, and I actually didn't take any pictures of it either. So it's like I didn't even knit it, which is very frustrating. So like you can see if you go to my Ravelry projects, nearly, except for the most recent ones that I need to update photos for, nearly every single one of my projects has a picture associated, which I like how I want my Ravelry projects to like all have pictures. But I don't have a picture for this because I was thinking, oh, I'll just get a picture. My sister can just take a picture of herself wearing it, and then I can put that on Ravelry, but she never got it. So my sister still really wants a red kind of big wraparound shawl thing for knitted by me. And so when I was home this past Christmas just now, she said that she still really wanted that, and so that's what she wants for her birthday this February. And so I actually still have quite a bit of yarn left from that project, and so I think I can use the other yarn. So I think I can use the leftover red yarn, Knit Picks Brava Sport, and make her a scarf. And so she said that she actually wants something that she can wrap around her head. So I really thought of all of those hood patterns that seem to be like really hot right now. I swear I see them everywhere. And I'm going to make her one of those patterns that has a hood and a kind of like long end to the hood so that you wrap it around like it's a scarf. And I think I'm just gonna make the scarf sections as long as I can until I run out of yarn. And then my plan is to actually, even though I think these patterns have like ties at the end, my plan, instead of a tie, is to use this button as a closure for when she wraps it around her head. And I think what I'm gonna do is add like a series of buttonholes on one end so that if she wraps it around a different way, she can still like find a buttonhole to put the button through, or if she wants it like looser or tighter, she can still like choose how wrapped around the scarf it is. So I'm definitely gonna have to play around with the positioning of those buttonholes. But I think by like adding multiple buttonholes, it's gonna give me a lot of like leeway to make it fit okay. But my sister, her middle name is Rose, and so she wanted this red scarf with a rose button to kind of like match the rose part of her name. And so yeah, that is the other acquisition that I got at that button store. And so I'm probably gonna cast that on fairly soon. It is an accessory, so I think it won't take quite as much time as a sweater, but because it's a scarf, it's still, I wouldn't call it like a small accessory. So I think that will be an upcoming whip, if not in the next episode, the episode after that, because her birthday is at the end of February, and so I really do want her to have it by her birthday, so I kind of want to be mailing it to her by like mid-February. So yeah, that's coming up too. So another acquisition I have that is related to upcoming plans is some yarn. And so this is Cascade Yarn's Cherub DK. And I, as you know, have been knitting a lot with the sock version of Cherub, so the fingering weight version of Cherub by Cascade Yarns. And I have enjoyed that so much that I was really curious about what the DK weight version was like. And so I got this yarn, which is the Ivy Heather colors. So it is a mixture of green and like kind of like bluish green mixed in, although I think it's quite hard to see it, like even in person, it's very subtle. So I don't know if you can even tell. Online, you could see it pretty clearly, but I think you can actually see it like, you can see it, it's harder to see it in person than you can see it online actually. So to me, I thought this was gonna be more heathered, but it's really just green, which is fine because, so my plan for this yarn, I got 9 skeins, it's a DK weight, and my plan for this yarn is to make a Monday sweater for my grandma. So when I was home over Christmas, of course, you know, I talk about the knitting that I've done, or I'll be wearing my hand knit sweaters, and then my family asks me about them, and they kind of know that I'm really into knitting, and so it just comes up as a conversation. And my grandma, when we visited her for Christmas, was telling me that she would really love a sweater, and so I said, oh, of course, that's amazing, I would love to make you a sweater. And she said, just anything green. So I said, oh, this is a perfect opportunity for me to try this yarn that I've been wanting to try. And I think I've only knit one other thing in green, and I personally love green. I love wearing green, and so I really need to knit more with green. And so I'm going to make the Monday sweater by Petite Knit for my grandma with this yarn. So I have actually cast on this project already, and I cast on with 3.75 millimeter needles, even though the pattern calls for 4 millimeter needles, because when I did a gauge swatch with this yarn, even at 3.75, I think my gauge was still a little bit smaller than what the pattern calls for, because this is a fairly thin DK. So here, I don't know if you can really tell without any comparison. Okay. So here, let's compare. So I've got the fingering cherub above in white, and then the DK cherub below. I don't know if you can tell the difference, but I don't feel like this DK weight is like twice the weight of the fingering. This is quite a light DK, and I didn't realize that when I ordered it. And so when I did my swatch, not only was my gauge too small, but I also didn't really love the fabric. It felt a little bit holey, and I was actually having trouble knitting it. Like I for some reason it was like felt slippery to me, and the knitting experience was already not super great at the gauge that I was knitting it, and so I think it really needs to be knit up on like 3.5 millimeter needles or lower, at least in my hands, like with my knitting gauge. So I knit up a swatch with just Cherub DK, and I didn't really like it, but I cast it on anyways because I was, well, I have this yarn and this is what I meant to do with it, and I didn't really know what else to do because holding this double was going to be too much, and I was going to have to order like the same amount of yarn all over again, so I didn't really want to do that, so I just cast on, and I only knit like 2 rows of the collar just to get it cast on. And then I had like one of those like nighttime epiphanies, and it's like when your mind gets quiet and then you can get ideas, and I thought, oh well, why don't I try and hold this with the green mohair that I have. And so I made a swatch of that, and actually let me go grab it for you. So I knit a swatch that was of Cherub DK and Ivy Heather combined with the grass green color of Lammy Yarn Soft Sensations. And so here's the swatch. And you can see that the grass green is pretty yellow, I think, especially in comparison to the Ivy Heather, which has some like blue undertones with it because of the heathering that it has. And so I really like this fabric. I like the fabric a lot better than the Cherub DK held on its own. But I was like okay about the color combination, but not like super thrilled. So I landed on definitely holding this yarn, the Cherub DK, with a mohair for the Monday sweater. But when I went online to go buy the Lammy Yarn Soft Sensations mohair to go with this, I saw that they also had a light green. And so I ordered a light green color to pair with the Cherub DK. And so I'm thinking that's gonna have a little bit more like actual green and leaning a tiny bit blue actually by the pictures. And I think that undertone is gonna work a lot better with this Cherub DK to hold it together. So that is my plan. So those are coming. Those will be the acquisitions in the next episode, or honestly probably will be a whip. This will probably be a whip in the next episode because, so as I said, I'm knitting this for my grandma, and she said, oh, just I would like a sweater at some point. And so I told her at first, I said, okay, great, I'll work on that and I will make it for you for Christmas next year. But I was just so excited to make her a sweater that I didn't want to wait all the way until Christmas. So my plan is to make this Monday sweater for her birthday, which is also in February. Her birthday is February 5th. And I think I'm going to try my best to get it done by February 5th, but if it's like shipping by then, or if it's just done some point in February, I think I'll be happy with that timeline. And if it's not done by her actual birthday, on her actual birthday, I can tell her that it's coming and that I am making it for her and maybe like send her a picture or something. So this has kind of got a deadline on it. So when I was talking about the Pearly Cardigan test knit that I had like some other deadline things going on, this is one of them. So I've got this Monday sweater that I'm making for my grandma. I have the Pearly Cardigan test knit, and then I want to make that hood for my little sister for her birthday. And then I also have the Staffin sweater that at this point I haven't cast on, but I'm going to very, very soon for the Staffin sweater cow. So I am about to have like so many whips going on at the same time. So yeah, it's gonna be a lot of things juggling, but it's gonna be really fun anyways. So this is one of the kind of deadline things I have going on, but the Monday sweater is just a basic raglan, so I think it's really just gonna be a lot of like fun stockinette in the round, which goes pretty quickly. So I think I'll be able to get it done in time. So I have a few other Notion acquisitions that aren't exactly tied to a project, and one of them is a gift that I received from my younger sister for Christmas, and I received some progress keepers from her in my stocking. So I received these really beautiful flower looking progress keepers. I actually don't remember what the label said on them, and I don't have it anymore. So I will see if I can get my sister to tell me where she bought these. I know that she bought them on Etsy. So if I can get that information from her, I will put the shop that these are from on the screen in case you're interested in getting some yourself, and I'll link it in the description. So I have different colors. So these are the other two colors that she sent me, that she picked out for me. So I've got these three really beautiful tulip progress keepers that I think especially in the spring will be really fun to put on my knits to keep track of progress, probably the amount of progress that happens in between episodes. And when I'm gonna have all these whips going on, I think even though I'll be knitting the same amount, my knitting progress is gonna be like split between all these different whips. And so I think I'm gonna have whips last a lot longer on these episodes than normal because I'll have so many going on at once. And so I think progress keepers are gonna be a really great way to see how much I actually get done in the few weeks that happen between episodes. So that is one acquisition. So the other acquisition is this yarn bowl that my friend Delaney of Black Dog Knits actually made herself. And it is so cool, and I've been able to use it because I've got some cakes of yarn that I'm using for that Pearly Cardigan text knit, and so I'm having multiple skeins that I'm drawing from, and so being able to put the cakes in here has been so useful. And it is this was handmade, so like she had some clay and then she was able to make this herself and then glaze it and everything. And so I am so grateful for this and so excited to be using it. Yeah, I have already been using it and I love it a lot and I really love the color. It's so cool, and I've just been keeping it like right on my coffee table where I like knit. That's our coffee table. It's next to our couch, of course, and so I've been like putting it on my coffee table and then I can draw from it as I knit on the couch, which has been really great. So I apologize, there might be a little bit of noise from a truck that is plowing our driveway right now because there's lots of snow here in New Hampshire, but we're wrapping up anyways. So the last acquisition I have to talk about is perhaps the most exciting one, and that is that I had a big surprise this Christmas, is that my younger sister got me a sewing machine for Christmas. It was something that I have mentioned before that I've been wanting to get into, that I really want to try making my own clothes. And actually the reason why I started knitting is because I really wanted to make my own clothes, and it seemed like knitting was an easier thing to start doing than sewing. Like, you needed more materials to start sewing, and with knitting all I needed to do was go buy like a skein of yarn and needles and I could just like get going. And then I fell in love with knitting so much that I've just been knitting all the time. But I have always had in my mind, and I have mentioned to my sister before, that I do want to sew, and so she got me a sewing machine for Christmas, and it's a Genome brand. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but Genome, which I think is a pretty well-known brand of sewing machine. It's a pretty basic one, which is perfect for me as a beginner. So it does maybe like 10 different types of stitches, which is still, I think, a lot. It does multiple types of straight stitches, and it does a zigzag stitch, other sorts of stitches that I don't even know about. And it is purple, which is so fun. Purple is my favorite color, so I absolutely love how it looks. I have unboxed it and I've put it on my desk, and I have not done anything with it yet because I am pretty intimidated by it. I'm just kind of afraid of breaking it, or like maybe, I don't know, there's like a needle involved, maybe like hurting myself. But I really want to learn how to sew, and I think that it might take me longer to learn how to sew than to knit, just because knitting is something that you can, like, I can do it every single evening, but I think sewing might be something that I do like just on the weekends sort of thing. But this past weekend, in preparation for learning how to sew, I got this just 1 yard of fabric, Waverly Inspirations 1 yard of fabric cut. It's 100% cotton, and it's really pretty. It's this really pretty white with like tan leaves color, and I'm thinking maybe I can make a pillowcase as my first project. And then I got some thread to use. My sewing machine came with a few bobbins and other things. And it came with a few bobbins, a few extra needles. So I think my plan is to find some tutorials that are specific for my exact sewing machine, and then I'm going to practice on maybe on a little bit of this. I'll have to cut out, see how much I actually need for a pillowcase. 1 yard, I don't know, maybe I am naive and 1 yard's not even gonna be enough for a pillowcase. But yeah, I think I'm gonna find some YouTube tutorials that are very specific for my exact machine, and then do some just like total practice stitches where I'm just like going back and forth on fabric that I'm not gonna do anything with, and then try to make this. So that's my plan to start sewing. So this podcast is probably, it's still gonna be mainly knitting. This is a knitting, I love knitting. This is a knitting podcast. It's gonna be about knitting, but it might edge towards a making podcast as well as knitting. And if I do have any sort of sewing finished objects, I will include them at the end of the episode if I have some done. So I don't think I'll do any sort of like works in progress for sewing, but if I have finished a sewing object, I will definitely tell you guys all about it. And I haven't even used my sewing machine yet. I just have it, and now I've got some fabric, and so maybe this coming weekend will be my first time using it. But I am like as new of a sewist as you can be. I have no idea what I'm doing. So if you are also a sewist and you have any sort of advice for a very beginner sewer, please leave them in the comments. I would really appreciate any sort of advice or encouragement or anything about sewing. I'm really, really excited, but also intimidated about this. And I could just like, I cannot wait for the time when I have like literally everything in my wardrobe is handmade. Like all of my sweaters are hand knit. I got like hand knit t-shirts, and then I've got like sewn everything else. Like that's my dream. That's what I want to happen. And I also got a bread machine for Christmas too. And so I've been making my own bread by like, oh my gosh, bread machines are amazing. I literally just put in water and flour and then they just go and they make bread. I mean, some other ingredients too, but basically you just put in the few ingredients, you press go, and then you come back a few hours later and then there's bread. It like mixes it, it kneads it, and then it bakes it. It's been amazing. And it was like, yeah, I feel very lucky to have such, you know, generous family members and friends to send me to give me such amazing gifts. So yeah, it was a really good holiday season. I hope it was a good holiday season for you. And yeah, I think that brings us to the end here. Again, if you're interested in knitting the Staffin sweater, either the cardigan, the sweater, or the vest, doesn't matter, please reach out to me on Instagram and I will add you to the group message. And that knit along, the Staffin knit along, is being hosted by myself and Lea of Black Dog Knits. So I think with that, I'm gonna send lots of big hugs to everyone and I'll see you next time. Bye!